I've been having a bit of a weird one recently. I find myself in this strange crochet limbo where I'm simultaneously really excited and super invested in finishing off this large crochet series that I've been working on for ages, but yet at the same time, I've somehow lost my crojo. Don't hit the table, Lee. How both of those things are true at the same time, I don't know, but that's what I want to talk about today. But before I do, I just want to quickly mention that if you're interested in participating in one of the videos from that aforementioned large series, or any of the other crochet community projects I have planned for that matter, please check out one of the previous videos in this series, and I will put a link for that down in the description. So if you'd like to know all about that, you can check that out down there. So crojo, excuse the blanket. It's so cold here at the moment. I'm sick of this icy weather and winter has barely even begun. So I'm trying to stay as warm as possible. Anyway, before we begin, I think we should maybe define crojo, just in case there are those of you out there who have not heard the term before, you're unfamiliar with it. So crojo is basically slang. It's an amalgamation of crochet and mojo mushed together, and it's essentially just your motivation to crochet, your crochet mojo. And I think a lot of the time I take my crojo for granted because crochet is something I so thoroughly enjoy doing. I just want to do it all the time, or at least 98% of the time. So when you hit a rough patch where you just don't feel motivated or inspired, it can take a bit of a toll on you. So the question has to be asked, what makes you lose that motivation, your crojo? And honestly, it can be a range of different things. I'm just going to be speaking from my own experience here today. If you have a different experience, please weigh in down in the comments. So just a quick sort of summary of the things that have affected me in the past, and one of which is currently affecting me right now. But those can be your health, whether that be your mental health or your physical health. Other times it can just be life circumstances. You're going through a situation or situations that just, it completely zaps your energy, your motivation. And the final reason I'm just going to quickly mention here is a growing interest in other hobbies. For me, all of those reasons have affected me over the years to a greater or lesser extent. My biggest one, my sort of final boss, is my physical health. That has impacted my life in just so many ways since I first got injured, first started having health issues, and unfortunately that's still the case to this day, and it's what I'm dealing with at the moment. I ended up getting sick, got the big Rona again, twice I have had it, and both times is because someone brought it to my house. The first time I was pissed off, and rightfully so, I will stand by that. But this second time, I don't think it was really anyone's fault. Someone came over, they didn't realise they were sick, they had no symptoms at the time, so there's no one to blame in that situation. It's just one of those things. But anyway, you don't need to know the gruesome details. But anyway, I ended up sick for a little bit, and unfortunately with me, the Rona, it exacerbates my pre-existing health conditions, and it's done so in this case. And at the moment, I'm feeling a lot better than I was, but I've just been left with this like all-encompassing lethargy, but it has completely zapped my physical motivation to crochet. Just the thought of trying to pick up a hook and crochet, it just makes me tired, and it's incredibly frustrating because in my head, my mind is screaming. It wants to crochet, it wants to create, it wants to finish this series I've been working on for so long now. And this is the worst possible time I could have gotten sick because it's really crunch time at the moment. And then I start to think, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this series finished, or at least do all the challenges that I wanted to do. And then I start feeling like anxious and guilty about that. But then I know it's ridiculous to feel anxious and guilty about that. And it just spirals from there. Sorry, there's probably going to be a lot of that in this video. What I'm essentially saying is, at the moment, the mind is willing, but the body's just lagging behind a little bit. And in order to try and combat that, even though really combating that is just going to be allowing my body to heal, to get better, but I've tried to do a couple of little things to try and get my crojo back. But also I have come up with a few other ideas that I didn't try, but I thought I would share anyway, in case someone out there is in the same situation and they're trying to get their own crojo back. So I've got a little bit of a list here that I'm going to be referring to, and these are just some things that I've either tried or they were ideas for things I could potentially try. Some of them just weren't quite possible for me at the moment, but I thought it would be good to share anyway. These are in no particular order. I'm just going to read them out as I've listed them. So the first one was to sort through your whips. If you're like me, you have a decently sized pile of whips. I went through mine the other day. That was actually because of this challenge, this series I'm working on. I needed a whip in order to finish one of those challenges, but I wasn't quite up to crocheting anything. But as I started going through my whips, the creative juices started flowing a little bit. I was looking at these whips and thinking, how can I finish them? Because a lot of them I'd started with no real goal in mind. I was just designing something and they are now half finished, so I sort of need to come up with ideas or ways in which I can finish them off. So that did help to a certain degree. It got me thinking about crochet projects again. So how I wanted to finish them, if I wanted to finish them at all, because there's some that I've set aside that I'm definitely going to frog, because not only do I lack the motivation to finish them, but I find myself not wanting to. They're not projects I'm like invested in or excited for anymore, so I'd rather frog them and reuse the yarn. So that was idea number one. Have a look through your whips. Maybe it might give you a spark of inspiration. Can't hurt to try, right? Idea number two was to do something crochet related or adjacent. In this case, the idea that I had was to do either yarn organization or scrap sorting, both of which I did to a certain degree. I took some of the yarn I had over there and just made sure it was in the correct project bags, because a lot of that I had already divided up, because I have project ideas in mind for which I want to use it, and I just wanted to make sure that was still all in order. There were some things I changed up because I had either a change of idea or a new idea, and I wanted my yarn organization to reflect that. And then in addition to organising my yarn just a little bit, I also did a bit of scrap sorting. If you watched the Hook Around and Find Out video from 2-3 weeks ago, I'm not quite sure, but I did organise some scrap in that video as well. And what I did yesterday, the day before, it was sort of an extension of that. I sorted the scrap just a little bit more. I had a few additional pieces of scrap that I could add to that pile. And so that... Why do I keep hitting things? I need to learn to talk without gesturing everywhere. Maybe that's if I sit on my hands. No, that feels really unnatural. Where was I? Scrap sorting. So that was idea two. Try and do something, while not directly crochet related, it was still crochet adjacent. So in this case, it was yarn organization and scrap sorting. And that brings us to idea number three. Idea number three is honestly probably the one I've had the most fun with this week, in part because it allowed me to do so from the comfort of my bed, where I was sort of, passed out. But that is to brainstorm. In this case, I brainstormed new ideas for projects and videos I could create for the channel, but I also took the opportunity to build upon already existing ideas, because what I will do is on my phone, I just have a note app. I think it's just Google Keep, and I have like separate notes. One of those notes is just like a list of ideas. It might be a word, a phrase, a general idea of something I think could be really cool, and when I have an idea, I'll just pop it in there. But at the time that I have the idea, I might not necessarily have the meat and potatoes of the idea, but I find it's good to come back to those ideas at a later stage, and after you've had more of a chance to think about it, to let it sort of masticate in your mind a little bit, you may be able to expand upon it, and you can like fully flesh it out at that point. And that's what I did a lot this week. I came up with some new ideas that I've just popped in my notes, but then some of my older ideas, I took those and I sort of really had to think about how I'd like to approach them in the future, how I'd like to construct or create these projects. And then I just created a new note for each of those individual ideas, and I just typed away. I expanded on that. And even though I'm not physically crocheting, I'm still taking part in the creative process, which I enjoy doing. Another H2O break. What are we up to now? Idea 4? I think for idea 4, which in my notes just says plan a project, I think I can safely count that under the umbrella of idea 3. I'm pretty sure I covered plan a project when I was discussing brainstorming ideas. Moving on, idea 5 was to go looking for inspiration, and you can get inspiration from a number of places. You might be watching crochet or craft content on YouTube. You might be scrolling through social media, whether that's Pinterest, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. You might just look outside and find nature inspiring. You could be inspired by the people around you, the media you watch. There's really no limit as to what can inspire you to create a project. So if you're feeling that lack of motivation, you don't know what to create, take in the world around you and see if that sparks off an idea. My next idea was to change up your space or your crochet location if you can. A lot of my crocheting takes place in this room here, either right in this spot, or I'll sit like there in my chair, or even at the PC over there. But most of it happens in here, and that's for good reason. Literally all my crafty stuff is in this room. It's a comfortable, warm, quiet, well, it's mostly quiet. Sometimes there are kids and or animals that get in here and make it less so, but for the most part it is a quiet space, and I take comfort in that, being able to crochet in my space here. But if it's not working for me, there's no reason why I can't change it up a bit. I will sometimes crochet on my bed. I can crochet like out in the lounge room, on the couch out there. Crocheting out in public is not something I do very often, for the simple reason that I don't go outside very often, but that can be something you could try as well. One thing I do like to do when I get the opportunity is actually crochet like on the way when we go back home. That's a several hour round trip, so there is plenty of opportunity to get crocheting done in the car. So there's a couple of things that I do, and there are a number of different ways that you can change up your routine a bit. It's one of those things that I think it's worth trying, even if you keep it as simple as changing the seat you normally sit in, just to see if the simple change in location can help bring that crojo back. Another idea I had was to basically just walk away for a bit and do something else. And the something else could be absolutely anything you want. It could be painting, drawing, baking, gardening. It could just be sitting down for 5 minutes and having a cup of tea. My goal with this one was to kind of provide a bit of a distraction, something to get me out of my head a little bit and stop me obsessively thinking about crocheting, as hard as that can be sometimes. What I tried in this case was a bit of digital art. I've done it in the past, and in the past I mean it's probably almost 15 years ago, but I've done the more traditional drawing, painting, and while I would like to actually get back into those at some point, I wasn't physically feeling up to trying those, this past couple of weeks. So I gave digital drawing a go instead. Not something I've really dabbled in before. I've made like a couple of little characters. You might recognize my Yarnivore character that I've made a 3D version of now, but I originally created that for my Yarnivore jumper. I've done little things like that, and I enjoyed it. So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna sit down and just scribble away in my drawing app. I don't have any technical skill. I don't know really much about digital art, but it was nice and relaxing to just sit there and draw and scribble. I didn't put any pressure on myself. There was nothing that I really intended to draw. I didn't have a specific goal in mind. I just sat there and doodled, and it was fun. I enjoyed myself, and I managed to take my mind off crochet and this series that I'm supposed to be working on for, at least several hours, so I count that as a win in my book. The next idea on my list, what are we up to? I think we're up to like 8 or something. Not that the particular number really matters all that much, but what I think is number 8 is something I didn't actually do myself, but it was still an idea I had that I thought could potentially help someone else out there, and that was to choose either a smaller or just a different crochet project. If you're working on something in particular, let's say for example you're working on like a big complex amigurumi piece and it's just not working at the moment for whatever reason, perhaps in that case switching your focus to a different crochet project may help. So if you're making a big amigurumi, maybe switch over to making, I don't know, an item of clothing. Or if you don't want to do a project that's that big, maybe you could make something small like a granny square or like a little fidget toy or something. Just changing things up a bit and seeing if that helps. While I didn't do it myself this time, the reason I added the idea to the list is because it is something that I have done in the past. So I have made big amigurumi and I've got stuck on them. The design just wasn't working out how I wanted it to. I was frustrated and I thought, nope, you know what, I'm going to put this down for now. I'm going to switch focus to something else, and that did help me back then. So maybe if you're someone who is struggling with a similar situation, it could help you too. And then the last idea on my list is another one of those that I didn't implement myself this time, but I have done so in the past, and that is to just take a break. And your break could last anywhere from the amount of time it takes to drink a cup of tea, or it could be in the realm of days to weeks to maybe months if you need it. Just take a step back and take a break. Yeah, so that is the last idea that I had on my list, and it's at this point that I'm going to reach out and ask all of you, what do you do when you lose your crojo? Is there a specific technique, something you do that helps when you're in that situation? If so, please share it down in the comments so we can all maybe learn something new. There's actually one last topic that I would like to cover briefly before we finish up here today, and that is to say that all of these ideas that I've listed throughout this video, they are really only intended to address sort of surface level issues. If the reason or reasons that you've lost your crojo is due to some deeper issue, whether you're dealing with a mental health struggle, these ideas are probably not going to help you address it. You really need to, if you're able to, see a mental health professional. Something that I've had to do as well, if the underlying cause of your lack of motivation is depression, for example, been there, done that. You're not going to fix that by looking for inspiration on Pinterest. So please, if you're able to, get yourself the mental health help that you need. So yes, all the ideas listed here are just intended for that surface level stuff. I am in no way qualified to deal with anything deeper than that, so please bear that in mind. And my final thought here today is just don't be too hard on yourself. Your crojo will come back. Perhaps it might take a little bit of work, it might take a little bit of time, but you will get there. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much for watching this video. Like it if you enjoyed it, share it if you think it's worth sharing, and I will see you in the next one.